So this Gonzaga team is 11-2 to start the year. They have two more non-conference games before they get into conference play. One against CSU Bakersfield and the other against North Alabama. Two games that they should win handily. But before I talk about how I see Gonzaga finishing in the West Coast Conference, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the notable games they've had so far this year, and then strengths and weaknesses of the team. So the first notable game was the game against Duke in Maui, the championship game, a game in which Gonzaga won 89-87, a game that ended up being a lot closer than it really was. Gonzaga dominated the first 30 to 35 minutes of that game. They forced Duke into bad shots. Gonzaga got whatever they wanted on the offensive end. They controlled the pace. They put Duke in pick and rolls and forced them to switch, and then took advantage of those matchups, especially down low. Ajimara did, and Clark did as well. So that was something that was really good to see for Gonzaga, a really fun game to watch. Their defense looked pretty good in the first half too. And so the next notable game is the game against Tennessee, in which they lost 76-73, a neutral site game. A game that I think Gonzaga should have won, a game in which Gonzaga controlled the pace of that game, got what they wanted, mostly on the offensive end. It just didn't hit as many as they'd like. A game in which they just need to close out towards the end there and not allow Tennessee to stick around like they did, because that allows for Admiral Schofield to hit a couple of big threes at the end of the game. So I think if they just put them away a little earlier, then they get away with a win there, but definitely a game that they'll learn from. And the final notable game is the game at UNC, a game in which they lost 103-90, a game that really showed the weaknesses of Gonzaga's defense. Gonzaga's rotational defense was terrible in that game. Kobe White and Kenny Williams got all up in the paint there, and then were able to kick out to shooters like Cam Johnson, and we even saw guys like Nasir Little hitting jumpers, and Luke May, but their defense looked atrocious there. Something that can't happen. Obviously a tough road game, but still they cannot be allowing 103 points. They're going to have to learn how to defend, because if they can learn how to defend, they can beat anyone, because their offense is so efficient. And so one of the weaknesses that I'm going to talk about is their half-court defense. They're ranked 54th in defensive efficiency rating. Last year they were ranked 18th, and so they're going to need to be able to pick that up. Obviously we'll probably see their rating go up as they're in the West Coast Conference and don't play as many efficient offenses as we see in teams from the ACC or the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12. So we'll have to see what happens there, but they're really going to have to pick up their rotational defense. Another weakness is they're losing the three-point battle in every game, and something that's so crucial in the game nowadays is three-pointers. They're going to need to be able to adjust to that. Obviously, they have an efficient offense. They just need to shut down three-point shooters from teams that they play. Obviously, like Cam Johnson hit like 6 threes against them. Admiral Schofield hit 6 against them. So they're going to have to be able to lock down some three-point shooters and start minimalizing the margin that they have for those three-point attempts and makes for those games. But some of the strengths, talking about, obviously, like I said, they have the most efficient offense in the country, which is pretty scary because they don't even hit many three-pointers. I think we'll start to see them shoot more, especially when Killian Tilly gets back, a guy who averaged 13 points for them last June and made 45 of 94 three-pointers last year. So a guy that can shoot it, that can help spread the floor for them, which will also create opportunities for Rui Hachimura in the post, who is really good in the post, averaging 21 points per game. He's also able to hit the mid-range jumper, and Brandon Clark, we see him coming off screens and also attacking from the outside, able to pull up and hit jumpers and hit floaters. As a big man like him, he can also attack from the post and gets a lot of boards. But Josh Perkins is the key for that team. Averages 10 points per game along with 7.7 assists. Really just creates opportunities for guys like Zach Norvell to hit jumpers. Zach Norvell is hitting 37% of his threes. He's made 39 through 13 games, so he obviously has the green light. A guy that can really shoot the ball, and I think we'll see his percentage go up throughout the year. But also, like I talked about, when Killian Tilly gets back, they're really going to be even more efficient on the offensive end. They got guys coming off the bench like Petrusev. He's good in the post, and he's forces teams to collapse on him, and he also gets a bunch of points in the paint off right hooks and left hooks. So he's a good guy coming off the bench for them. So where do I see Gonzaga finishing in the West Coast Conference? Obviously, West Coast Conference, like I said, not the most competitive conference. I mean, obviously a good conference still. They have teams like BYU, St. Mary's. Those are probably the two big teams that they'll have to face. San Francisco somehow gives them a run for the money every time. But I see Gonzaga. I think the only really challenges they'll have is St. Mary's and BYU, but I think they'll go undefeated in conference play just because of how efficient their offense is and the fact that they won't face many super efficient offenses in which their defense will struggle. I think a game to watch is the game at BYU on January 31 because BYU can really spread the floor and hit some threes. So that's a game that they could lose. I think they'll win, but a game that will be definitely close. And so I see them taking first, like I said, in the West Coast Conference. I see them being a 1 seed come March Madness time. And then where I see them finishing in the tournament, I think they're going to make a run to the Final Four. I don't think they'll get to the championship game. I think Final Four is where they end just because they'll have to face most likely a really efficient offensive team and a team that they probably won't be able to guard as well as they have against teams that aren't as efficient. So I think I see them making it to the Final Four, possibly an exit in the Elite Eight, but I would think they're going to make it to the Final Four.